there's a cost factor. These projects and programs are, and I can tell you the first one, we spent $1 million trying to fix something that we bought. It was not planned. To the last one I did, we had it mapped out so good that our consultants came in. We probably saved a couple $100,000 from the initial quotation.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. The most critical factor in winning or losing a deal is always timing. And the faster you convert your customer, the faster you answer all of their questions, and the faster you ship it to them, you can outrun your competition. To do so, you need to think about the speed to your customers and suppliers. The speed requires cross-functional alignment and everyone operating on one system and with process harmony. In today's episode, we have our guest, Rich Sade, who describes his journey and the pitfalls of implementing 6 ERP projects throughout his career. He also highlighted the importance of the pre-ERP phase and how that could improve the chances of success of selection and implementation. Finally, he also touched on how he could convert his business from make to order to configure to order and improve the customer experience while expediting the sales cycle. Let me introduce Rich to you. Richard Sade is a transformative operation executive, accomplished in leading organizational turnarounds, expansions, and acquisitions. Undeterred by obstacles presented in today's complex corporate environments, Rich excels at meeting challenges head-on. An advocate for process optimization, Rich's varied experience makes him a valuable contributor to business processes. His vast skill set includes building, implementing, and managing enterprise-level operations, delivering complex, high-risk, and high-visibility projects, developing, leading, and motivating cross-functional teams at all levels, identifying and seizing opportunities for improvement, and leveraging experience and expertise to collaboratively resolve root causes of complex issues. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Rich, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Sam. How are you today?
Good afternoon. I am doing wonderful and I am super excited to have you in discussing your experience with your operational transformation and the ERP journey. Just to kick things off, Rich, do you want to start with your personal story and current focus?
Sure, Sam. Hey, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on and welcome me into the network, your Rocks network. It's a pleasure to be with you again today. Yes, my background is pretty typical in the operational world of manufacturing. I went to school at Purdue University for industrial management, which is a degree that combines industrial engineering and business. After getting out of school, I immediately went into the engineering mode and operations, which took me through my career, moving up through the ranks as a plant manager, division manager in larger corporations, which exposed me to a lot of different ERP systems. I think I have 6 implementations under my belt throughout the years. And then it led me into a lot of the automation requirements as technology through the years changed, going anywhere from machine tools all the way up to again, the operational side. I mean, I started in the business. We operated on an IBM 36, so
Yeah.
I'm not showing you my age, but that's to where we are today. So
Yeah.
through that journey, I've been very blessed to see, as I call it, the good, the bad, and the ugly
Yeah.
of companies, not only domestically but internationally. And the journey of the technology change and the boom of ERP systems through the early 90s and into the 2000s has been quite dramatic because processors and software being more condensed and again being able to collect a lot more data to run your businesses has been probably the biggest change that I've seen. Now we're facing the new version of manufacturing 4.0, doing the connectivity of the shop floor into your systems, and obviously the Internet of Things has been around for a while, but I think that's still in its early years of growth, and that's going to continue to grow. So really my background evolves really around being at a higher level. I was a COO for my last 15 years prior to me kind of semi-retiring here. And actually, I thought I was going to semi-retire, but right now I'm really busy consulting and doing some other projects. So that's kind of in a nutshell my background. Operationals. I've actually been on the sales side, executive sales side. I got some of those tools under my belt in how that sales is a big perspective into an ERP system or EMS system also. So, it's funny. I tell CEOs or CEOs all the time, or presidents, vice presidents, one of the things when they're looking at these systems, I find that sometimes the sale, depending on the president's strength, whether they're more a marketing driven or an operational driven type of executive, is that the sales cycle and the sales perspective and their customer markets get left out a lot of times in the planning of putting these new systems together. And I just find that very unique in the fact that, the very first step in business is sales. And a lot of companies don't take a lot of the requirements of what their sales cycle and salespeople need to operate their end of the business too. So that has to be a big consideration when choosing an EMS or ERP system. So just in summary, that I just wanted to add that to the plate that my background also had the sales cycle. I've had quite a few years in the sales management arena.
That's amazing. So some very interesting comments and background there. ERP systems, when we think about them, I don't think a lot of companies think of them as the sales enabler. So I think it's going to be super exciting to talk about that, what transformation activities that you have done and how it has impacted either the customer experience or overall the sales cycle. But before we do that, we have one of the standard questions that we have for all of our guests, Rich, and that is going to be your perspective on business growth.
Well, I think we're at a time, especially after COVID, is pre-COVID, we were really on a boom of changing our people upgrading their systems and really taking a look at the next 5-year to 10-year business cycle plan.
Yeah.
And in that plan is that technology is as I stated earlier, has really changed throughout the years from the fact that this new push for manufacturing 4.0 and Internet of Things is pushing more and more integration into businesses and to the customer and obviously the supply chain dynamics of information and data, how it's processed and analyzed and put into daily businesses in their cycle. And I think the growth is going to be continued in that arena of the higher tech data collection, data analyzation, and expansion of ERP systems into the supply chain. So that communication of data and structured can be what I call speed to the customer and speed to the supplier in these systems. And there's still a lot of legacy systems out there that have been built over the years, and they keep putting links and add-ons to them. But my experience is at some point, those legacy systems just can't be repaired or added to. So there has to be a change in operational software and platforms. So the real growth is going to be, especially in the manufacturing side, is getting to the shop floor, getting that data collection. And again, I think the person that gets left out on that is sometimes the sales cycle.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, one of the things I learned, we'll talk a little bit about my Sage experience, X3, is that speed to the customer will gain you growth and it will gain market share.
Yeah.
It's a very simple equation that I learned using that product and how we configured it. And I think with some of the programs that are coming out, and whether it's through the government and or being driven by SpaceX, aerospace, the green technology, the expansion of electric vehicles. And I think one thing that people are going to start seeing too is the requirements, and or a lot of people argue with me about this, but we have to look back at our nuclear objectives as far as creating electricity in the power grid. And so there's a lot of, I'm close to Oak Ridge, Tennessee right now. That's where I live. Yeah. And there's a lot of activity going on in these laboratories right now. And I think the underlying secret part of that is that you'll see some more advancement in the nuclear technology, whether it's in power generation and or in our defense systems, all the way down to a commercial grade reactor. So that's really, I think, is going to be the growth. It's technology, again, data collection, how companies are going to reconfigure themselves for the future, and that long range planning of where you want to be in speed to the customer and the supply chain.
Yeah, so you hit on a very important points there. Especially, I love the way you phrase it. Speed to the customer, speed to the supplier. I don't know how many manufacturers are really thinking from that perspective. And you are so right that time is everything when it comes to serving your customers. So irrespective of whether you talk about speed to the customer, speed to the supplier, they all translate into your ability to be able to win that deal, to be able to win those customers.
One other point there, and I guess I left it out, I got it in my notes here, is that the millennials, your generation, your satisfaction is immediate. You guys want instant information, instant.
Yep.
I come from a little bit different era where we can wait a day. Your generation needs speed and instant intelligence to make decisions and those type of things. And again, on the growth side, that mentality and that way of life is going to drive companies, especially as the Generation X matures into executive roles.
Yeah, and you are so right. And by the way, not only instant gratification, I guess the other aspect of that is going to be that we, as millennials, we don't appreciate as much hand holding, to be honest. We want to research things on our own and before we talk to anybody. So when we talk about the sales cycle, we really want to read about it. We want to understand it before we talk to any of the salesperson. So obviously, that actually reflects in your consumer behavior, that reflects in your consumer expectation. So I want to go back to the 6 implementations that you have done from the ERP perspective. And this is what I typically talk about and argue about, Rich. Okay. So as you know, ERP implementations are trickier to master. Once you have done a couple of times, then you would know what are going to be the pitfalls. So when you have implemented these ERP systems, and the other thing that I like to talk about is, if you are doing it for the first time, so if your failure rate for the ERP is going to be, I don't know, maybe 50%, 60%, however you want to define that. But if you are doing it for the first time, I like to talk that, in my opinion, it's probably going to be 70, 80, 90%, just because people who are implementing for the first time, they just don't know what they are doing. and what they are getting into. So what I want you to touch on is the evolution overall. When you implemented your first ERP to the second one to your sixth one, what were some of the learnings? Were you successful in your first implementation? So do you want to describe the overall, if the business was different, business model was different, what kind of ERP solutions you have implemented over the period of time in those six implementations?
I think the best way to describe it is as I've gone through this through the years.
Yeah,
One thing I've learned from the first to the sixth
yeah,
is that you have to have a very good roadmap. You have to understand your business. It has to be mapped out. Every nook and cranny of the business, all the way down to the janitor, has to
yeah,
be understood. Whether you put together flow charts and operational sheets or whatever, but developing that process flow, workflow, all the way from the president requirements in a system to the janitor has to be very well understood and mapped out. Because when it comes down to whether you have consultants come in or you have a team of IT people applying or selecting, I guess the proper word would be the selection of the right solution has to be understood. Because I've been in two of the six that I've done, we actually chose the wrong product because we were led down a path because we just didn't know. We didn't know our own processes, and when we got into implementation, those ugly heads came up of the software can't meet that need. So it is very important to right out of the gate to understand what you want. Now, saying that is, where do you want to be? So there's two sides to that. Is here's where we're at, and it's very simple and very obviously basic. Is where do you want to be? And a lot of companies don't know where they want to be. They just want to fix problems that they currently have. But where's your vision? Where do you want to be? What are the other things you want to integrate into your operation? What is the growth? Are you going to do acquisitions? Are you going to take on a new product line? Is there products in R&D that are going to come out? How does that look to your new system? And those type of things. So that's the lesson that I can tell everybody from going from 1 to 6 is really understanding where you are and where you want to go, and how does those 3 or 4 solutions that you're looking at fit those scenarios. It's very important then also that all different departments and or operational people are on board with how the current situation is and where you want to go. I mean, the buy-in is extremely important for implementation and all the things that you that go along with the implementation. And there's a cost factor. Let's face it. These projects and programs are, and I can tell you the first one, we spent $1 million trying to fix something that we bought. And it was not planned. So the last one I did, we had it mapped out so good that our consultants came in, and we probably saved a couple $100,000 from the initial quotation. So there is a cost factor that can be addressed throughout the process.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I definitely want to go a little deeper into all of these implementations. And I don't know if the 2 out of 6 that you mentioned, the first one failed, but I'm definitely interested in touching a little deeper into the 2 out of 6 and what were the specific challenges. So when you said that the mapping was an issue, obviously there is going to be some sort of misfit when it comes to the ERP product and the process, and you did mention that you were not aware of those specifics. So I'm really interested in those specifics. What was the miss there in those implementations? So do you want to take us through the journey of first through 6 in slightly deeper detail?
On the first one, we went from an IBM 36 to an AS400 platform. And the conversion of data from one system to another was not what we originally intended it to be. So that was really the disaster part of that one. And that, again, costs a lot of money. And we never did get it right from that conversion factor. So there is a conversion factor of your existing data going into any new system has to be very well understood, and those bridges have to be well set up so there isn't any issue with that data conversion. And I would say that was the same issue I had on our second one in the early 90s,
Okay.
the data conversion. Again, back in that day, there wasn't tools out there to do data conversion like there is today
Yeah.
in a lot of these systems. So that, I think, was really the issue with those two, what I would say, not complete or successful implementations. The third one was more of an accounting issue, an accounting package. We bought a platform that was more geared to the accounting side of the business, and it didn't really have enough modules in it for the supply chain and manufacturing side. I mean, they had a lot of bolt-ons from other software developers, and again, when you get into a situation that the you have various platforms feeding into a central ERP system,
Yeah.
that presents issues in its own because, again, as technology and software changes, just a change in Microsoft causes havocs and these bridges and links to databases that we really had a hard time with. And again, it was costly.
Yeah.
So I'll fast forward to the last solution that we came up with. Understanding those problems that I had through the years, I sat down with my team and said, look, I want one system that is going to run the company, and it's going to run it from the janitor to the president's needs.
Yeah.
And also is got open architecture so we can link in our supplier base and our customer base. So that was the 40,000 foot criteria that we set out. Then we went to select a vendor, and we had 7 vendors that we put out there. But prior to that, we took 6 months and mapped all our processes. And it was an interesting experience because when we did that, the shop didn't know what some of the things the office did with information, and the office didn't know what the shop did with information, and accounting didn't know what the other 2 entities were doing. So not only was it a good exercise to understand our business, but it also taught everybody how the business really ran and what were the shortfalls and the good things between departments and the system. Because at the time, we were running a separate accounting system to our manufacturing system, to our inventory control and our production scheduling. We had 3 different legacy systems going at the time. So we had to map those 3 out and see how we can link it. So I describe it as we put a 3-ring binder together, and it was 3.5 inches thick when we got done. And then I said, okay, what do we want to be? Where can we streamline? And we put our heads together, and we brought in one consultant, and that 1 3/4 or 3.5 inches of 3-ring binder paperwork became 1 1/4 inches. And that's what we went out to the marketplace and said, this is what we want to be. How could your platform give us or do you have a solution to give us what we want right here in this book? And so we got it down to 3 vendors, and our final selection was the Sage X3 product. And there was a lot of reasons why we chose the Sage product. It allowed us to run the full business operationally, sales and supply chain in one system very efficiently. And it also, because the nature of our business, we manufactured hardware and hinges. One of the things that it did for us too, our product mix was about 40% made to order. We had high volume OEM products that were repeats, and then we had what we called a stocking distributor products. In other words, they were cataloged items that could be bought off the shelf. So those 3 categories had different unique requirements for the ERP system book. I called it the black book. It was the term that we gave the black book. So if you can meet the black book requirements, then it was a pretty good solution. And again, we chose the X3. Now, one of the things that attracted us to the X3 was that it had a very robust configurator in it. And that part configurator, we could set up what is known as phantom logic in the configurator. And in that phantom logic, whether it was a off-the-shelf stock item, a repeat customer, high-volume part, or made-to-order scenario, the configurator could present itself in that fashion to all three of those different requirements. So if somebody called in and said, hey, I'm designing a product and here's what it's going to look like, we could plug that into the features of that particular product line, what materials, configuration of holes and part configuration into the system, and it would develop a bill of material, a sales or a cost record, a routing through our manufacturing process, and be ready for a sales order. So once a quote was generated, it had all those links already generated in the background, which also generated that cost record to accounting. So accounting could look at, well, we got all these quotes out there, and geez, we're looking at maybe some material costs in the near future. It just gave us all kinds of little data points that we could use to better manage the business between departments. So after a sales order, literally a couple keystrokes, that quote then became a sales order, and those functions that it already generated would be reviewed and maybe tweaked depending on if there were some changes, and then released into the scheduling module and into a queue that we used a visual system. It was quite unique because the way the manufacturing was set up, the parts would come out, and because they were specific, had a routing that was very specific to the manufacturing process, we could funnel those down into a schedule and get an acknowledgement back to the customer on delivery, literally within a few hours. So I talked about speed of the customer. It used to take days to get an acknowledgement out in the old system, and we were virtually within less than an hour to 2 hours, an acknowledgement back to the customer. And we found out that was a huge benefit, and it actually helped our sales effort to show that our technology was superior, and we were really on the ball when it came to the customer needs, and the speed to the customer as far as quoting and sales orders. And that information to them then could be linked through various ways of acknowledgments, fax, EDI. We actually had two customers that had Sage products that I did a test with one customer where we could link the two Sage platforms together, and that acknowledgement actually would go into their production schedule. So that was the power of what I saw in that software or that platform when we really started to dive into the basement of it, if you will. What could we do with it after we got it implemented? So those type of fingers that came out of the software into the supply management and customer base really, really helped us grow the business.
Okay, so one of the very interesting thing that you did from the business model perspective that I am pretty sure a lot of manufacturers are not going to be familiar with or comfortable with doing. They just don't know how to go from point A to point B. Now, converting this whole idea of make to order to configure to order, just because make to order is going to be slightly easier overall in understanding, in executing that. And that's why everybody sort of starts in the service mode, in you are going to operate with just one order in mind, right? But when you are trying to position this as configure to order, that requires a little bit more planning overall. It requires finding out the commonalities in your product and how you can build that template that is going to be used in the background to create these different configurations. So can you describe the process of how did you go from point A to point B, where you had all of these moving parts, where each order is going to look different, and then you could convert them into the configure to order scenario?
Sure. In the configurator, we created again, a phantom logic. So that phantom logic would look at, it was based on tables and some algorithms. In that logic, we would look at, let's say, one of the categories would be material, whether the material was stainless, aluminum, steel, copper, whatever. And then we would look at part configuration. What was the material made of? How thick was it? What's the width of the material? Those were some of the attributes. And then we did where the logic really came in is that what does the part look like? Does it have holes, slots? Does it have notches? Does it require welding? Does it require plating? Does it require outside services? And all those tables were built and put into the logic. So as you're building a part, you would go through the configurator and check off boxes with those attributes. And again, we had probably 95% of those attributes built into the system. Obviously there was some product that had to be built by hand, or some made to order stuff, that's not in the box. But once that criteria was put into the system, the phantom logic then would build this bill of material and build the part. And we actually then linked it to, I had a company called Cadzation build me a part configurator that would turn that part into a drawing using the attributes that we had put into the configurator to build that part. So not only did we get a drawing, and again, it wasn't for everything, but it would cover 75% of the products that would come through. In existing orders, obviously, we would have drawings and routings for the shop, but anything new that was a made to order, we could actually generate a drawing off the data that was coming out of the configurator. So that really was the key, is that we sat down and looked at all our products and said, what are the commonality? Again, it was like materials and functions of what machines they would run through, and then what was our standard tooling that we had in house. They had to be built in the background, for holes, punches, slots, and that type of configuration. And then, what are the sizes of those things, and what are the costs of those things, and then how do we route that, and then how do we schedule it? What are the manufacturing times? And so all that was in the background, and that's why it took us a year and a half to build. But all that and tested, it was all the background. And once we executed, it was amazing the time savings that we had, because you didn't have that many hands touching the product anymore. And the beauty thing about it, just think of this. So for a lot of people out there, especially today, what's going on in the material market, whether it's wood, metals, plastics, or whatever, there's an ever-changing scale that's going on with material costs. And one of the things that we had in the old system, we'd take days and days and days and days to change our material cost. And every quarter, material costs fluctuations in the metal world, in the world I was in, the stamping world, would change. And that was a very difficult thing to deal with from the standpoint of getting those costs regenerated to your customer base, and making sure that sales understood that there was some changes, whether it was up or down. Doesn't matter. So material changes up or down, and selling the down was easy, but selling the up is hard. And so the configurator, we could make those material changes and generate new prices to our customer within 24 hours. It would update overnight, change all those costing tables, generate the reports that we would need, and again, speed to the customer and saying, okay, based on new market conditions, your cost for this part that we've been making for you is going to change to this. And it was all market driven as far as raw material costs. On the other hand, on the supply chain, on the supply end, it gave us insight to, if we were to negotiate some new material prices or a new contract on buying some mill runs to save some cost, we could extract that out of that configurator and say, based on a forecast, we're looking at buying so many tons of steel or stainless steel or whatever the case may be. And it helped our purchasing department to negotiate better because they had more visibility of really what the future was going to be.
Okay, amazing, Rich. That's it for today. Do you have any last-minute closing thoughts or advice for our listeners?
Well, I think I'll circle back to, make sure when you're out there looking at purchasing or upgrading your EMS, ERP system, MFS, whatever you're looking at, and you're looking at legacy systems and the data, how it's driven and configured, really make sure you understand what you're buying and map out your processes, compare the two, and make sure that data conversion is going to work for you. Do some tests, invest the money, and again, get your marketing people involved too, and ask those questions. How can we get speed to the customer? What is the market requiring us to change? And having them as part of the decision-making process and the solution. And with that, reach out for help to guys like me that been down this road several times. There's a lot of good experience out there when it comes to making some of these decisions, the do's and the don'ts. And I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've seen it all. And so just make sure you got a good team and you really understand those. I mean, I've seen some people make some knee-jerk decisions on buying and upgrading their company, and really, making those decisions in 90 days versus really taking the efforts again to really understand. And I think in general, most people do that process, but just do it until you really feel comfortable. You know what you got.
Yeah, amazing. And my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be, it's all about speed to your customer. So the more you can reduce the speed, or the more you can increase the speed for the customer, the better experience they are going to get, the higher chances you are going to have of winning them, building relationships with them. So make sure you are not using too many hands as the product moves through the funnel and the life cycle. On that note, Rich, I really want to thank you for your time. This has been a powerful episode.
Well, again, thank you, Sam, for the opportunity, and stay safe and healthy, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rich, once again. I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Rich, head over to richardsade.workfolio.com. It's RICHARDSADE.WORKFOLIO.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Darren Mitchell, who discusses the challenges and strategies of people, processes, technology, and products at each stage of his growth through inflection points. Also, the interview with Marsha Williams, who discusses various components of MRP planning and where MRP fits in the process. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.